Alright, this is the last video for our narrative essay pre-writing packet. The last slides that we need to talk about are the title, which is this one, slide 18, and the rough draft and the checklist, which we'll get there in just a few moments. So, for creating a title, if we look at this page here, it says a good title is like the icing on a cupcake. Imagine this, one sunny afternoon you spend several hours baking cupcakes. You go shopping for the finest ingredients, organic eggs, rich dark chocolate, and thick cream. You take your time mixing and pouring. You bake it until it is the perfect golden color. Now, does it look finished right here, where we have this beautiful, probably delicious cupcake in this very plain wrapper? Not really. But if we add some frosting and toppings and a nice cupcake wrapper on there, it looks perfect. So that's kind of what we want to do with our essay. We want to add a title on there that makes it look interesting. This says the icing makes the cake look delicious, which attracts you. It makes you wonder how the cupcake will taste. And that is what our narrative title is like. It's the icing on the cake. It draws the reader in and makes the reader wonder what the story will be like. So a well-chosen title should do the following. It should catch the reader's attention. It should have a nice rhythm. And it should hint at the content while leaving some mystery. So it should give a hint of what the story is going to contain, but we don't want to just tell them straight out what the whole story is about in our title. We want to make it so that they're like, I need to read this and find out what that means. Down here there is a text box. You do not need to do anything in this box. Over here on the right hand side it says think of several possible titles for your narrative and choose the one that you like the best. We have the rubric next, which we already went over before we started the essay. I would definitely read through this and see what you need to do to get a 4 before you start writing your rough draft. You can go ahead and skip through this page and start your rough draft. So some reminders. You may not change the font, the size of the font, or the color. The font should be Arial, it should be black, and it should be size 18, so that when I start typing, that's how big it is on my screen. Okay, so this is your rough draft. Your final draft will also be typed. Details for your rough draft will be shared by me at a later date. So some things to remember when you're starting your rough draft. Paragraphing is the first one. So look at the cover of the packet. Also look at the pages that we worked on for paragraphing. Where'd it go? Up at the top. There we go. We have 2 pages. So look at the paragraphing pages to see where you need to be starting new paragraphs. Make sure your lead is interesting. So what you'll do, you'll put your title in first, and don't hit the space bar a whole bunch of times. Just come up here where it says align. You click on it and hit the center one right there, and then you can put your title in. When you hit enter, it's going to be in the center again, but go ahead and switch it back to left justified is what this is called. And then when we are starting a paragraph, we need to hit the tab button on the left side of your keyboard. So hit tab and then it jumps it over just the exact right amount of space. Do not hit the space bar 10 times. Hit the tab button, it jumps it over exactly where it should be, and then when you're typing, it'll type all the way across and it will go down over to here, and then when you're ready to create a new paragraph, you hit enter and then tab again, and then you'll have your indented paragraph. So when you are ready, when you get to this point, you're going to go up to the slide about your lead, and you're going to choose one of the leads that you wrote, and you'll just highlight it, you'll copy it, come back down to the rough draft, and paste it in right there where I have my indented line. After that, you got to go for it. Just start typing in your story. Include dialogue, which is where people are talking to each other. Make sure you are following the rules for dialogue. Up here we had 3 slides about dialogue, so make sure you're following those rules. We want to use descriptive words. We got that from slide 16, sensory details. We want to use transition words, which are up here, slide 12. We want to make sure we develop our characters. So we did the all about me for your main characters, so we want to make sure we include some of those details so that our reader can actually get to know who our character is and understand their character traits and why they behave the way that they do. The other thing that we need to go over is the planning right here. This is where you created some of the events that are going to happen in your story, especially down here in the plot section. So that's the direction your story should go in. This is just brief. This is briefly what will be in your story. So I am not expecting exactly what you have typed here to be your story. It should be a lot longer than that. There should be a lot more details, interactions between characters, description of the setting. There should be a lot more than this, but definitely go back here and review it so that you remember what direction you're trying to head when you are writing your story. If you run out of room in this box, you can see I kind of stretched it out to the sides, but if you run out of room in this box, instead of stretching it out more, just start a paragraph on this next page, and then you should be able to fit the rest of it in here. You can stretch this out a little bit if you need to and scooch this over, but it should be able to fit in there just fine. The next part is our revision checklist. So read through the checklist, move the green check mark to the box on the right when you have ensured your writing includes those details. So my writing is a narrative, which is a story. It's in a narrative viewpoint and has interesting characters. If yours does that, you click on the arrow and just move it over. My story is organized in a logical sequence of events and includes a conflict and a climax. Remember, conflict is problem. Climax is going to be that most exciting part where your reader is like, what's going to happen next? I got to keep reading to find out. If you've got that, move the check box or the check mark on over. My conclusion flows naturally and or reflects on the experiences or events, so the conclusion actually makes sense and wraps up your story. If you've got that, move the check mark. I use dialogue and descriptive language to develop events and characters. If you've got that, move the check mark over. I use transition words. Don't forget those transition words and phrases to show sequence and signal shifts in time and setting. Move that on over if you've got that. I use descriptive details and sensory language so that your reader can actually feel like they are there in your story. If you've got that, move the check mark. My writing includes style, sophisticated vocabulary, and voice. If you've got that, move the check mark. My writing has been reviewed, revised, and edited for spelling, grammar, and flow. If you need to do a spell check, you come over here to Tools, Spelling, and hit Spell Check. This will go through the whole slideshow. So just be aware of that when you hit Spell Check. It'll probably go through the entire slideshow of all of the things that you've typed into it. After you do that and you check for grammar and flow, then you can move your check mark over. I would also suggest, maybe when you're at home or you can come talk to me, reading your story out loud. If you want to go out into the pod for just a couple minutes to read your story out loud after you have finished your rough draft, let me know, because sometimes reading it out loud you're like, oh, that didn't make sense, or oh, this, how would somebody understand what I meant here? I understand it, but maybe my reader wouldn't. The last one, my writing has few errors. If you've got that, move your check mark on over. Down here at the bottom, it says click here to type your final draft into a Google Doc. Do not change the font, of course, and share it with Mrs. Mendoza when you are done. We will talk about this probably on Friday, maybe tomorrow. But just hold off on that. If you get done with your rough draft, you can come talk to me. Otherwise, go ahead and get working.